There is something that people often bring up when comparing level-based systems and point-based systems – character advancement. While in D&D, for example, your character progresses in discrete steps, levels, after obtaining a required number of XP. In GURPS, it all depends on how many character points the GM gives you for completing an adventure or a session. Many say that progression feels slower, and it usually really is slower, unless your GM gives out dozens of points at the end of every session. But there is another way to improve your character in GURPS that does not involve spending bonus character points, and that's improvement through study. The rules for improvement through study can be found on pages 292 to 294 of GURPS Basic Set, only 3 pages. But they have been greatly expanded in another book, GURPS Social Engineering Back to School, from 3 pages to 40 pages. So how does it work? Normally it takes 200 hours of learning to gain 1 character point in a learnable trait, but some forms of study are more effective than others, so sometimes you might need to study for more than 200 hours or less than 200 hours to get the desired point. There are 5 ways to study something. Well, more like 4.5. The first way is self-study. Each 2 hours of reading, exercises, practice, sparring with another student, etc., without an instructor, counts as 1 hour of learning. When doing self-study, you cannot adventure, work, sleep, etc. If you have a full-time job, you probably won't be able to study more than 4 hours per day, so you better get a part-time job or be unemployed. The second way is education, or formal instruction, as it is called in GURPS Social Engineering Back to School. This type of learning gives you the standard 1-to-1 exchange rate. 1 hour of study equals 1 hour of learning. However, you need a teacher with an effective skill level in teaching at 12 or higher. And the teacher must either know the skill he is teaching at your current level or better, or have as many or more points in the skill as you do. GURPS Social Engineering Back to School describes many modifiers that can be applied to teaching, such as the class size and medium used to teach. You can study with a teacher for up to 8 hours per day. The third way is intensive training, usually available only in the military and similar conditions. This is the fastest way to learn something. Teaching at this intensity requires both a higher level and more points in the skill being taught than the students have. Each hour of study counts as 2 hours of learning. Intensive training can last up to 16 hours per day and is stressful. Getting through requires HT 12 or better, or, if the GM allows it, Will 12 or better. Skills learned through intensive training are also harder to maintain if you are using the optional skill maintenance roles. The fourth way is learning on the job. If you have a job that requires a certain skill, then time spent on the job counts as study. However, since you rarely learn something new this way, and just use already known concepts, every 4 hours on the job count as 1 hour of learning. If you are learning new skills on the job, then you have to use one of the other methods of study. And the fifth way, that is more or less a variation of learning on the job, is adventuring. Some adventuring situations can count as study for certain skills. GURPS Basic Set says that trekking through the jungles might count as 16 hours of study per day for survival jungle, and suggests the GMs to be generous. This is more or less it for the rules in GURPS Basic Set. They can work as they are there, and they work well. However, they involve a lot of bookkeeping. You have to keep track of how many hours you spend studying each skill, and this may turn off some of the players and GMs. GURPS Social Engineering Back to School introduces a new way that greatly reduces bookkeeping, learning as a job. I already explained how jobs work in GURPS in another video. This works like a normal job, except that the pay is not in money but in hours of learning. This monthly study roll is made against will, modified by talent in your main area of interest, single-minded, attentive, and other traits. The basic monthly reward is 150 hours of learning. Add or subtract 10% per point of success or failure. Critical success gives you 400 hours of learning, while a critical failure means that you overworked and collapsed, taking 3D fatigue damage. You say what you learned before rolling, and after the roll, you divide the rolled hours among the skills you chose. This works differently for intensive training. You get 400 hours of learning that is not modified for your margin of success. Critical success, however, still doubles it to 800 hours of learning. Instead of will, you roll against HT, and there are cumulative penalties for consecutive months of intense training. Failure results in minor injury, while critical failure results in major injury. If intensive training does not involve physical exertion, then you may still roll against will, but failure results in new quirks or in full-blown disadvantages that may be temporary or permanent. Alternatively, if you want to make things more granular, you can use weekly HT or will rolls at +3 for intensive training. Each successful week will result in 1 character point. The book also provides guidelines for using bonus character points awarded by the GM as an accelerator to improve or learn skills if they were used under stress in adventuring conditions, and for passive studying, such as learning a new language by just living in a place where it is the primary language. There are many other interesting concepts introduced in GURPS social engineering back to school, such as new techniques, new applications of skills, and even a brand new advantage, accelerated learning. It discusses at length the process of teaching and all factors that can influence it, and also describes the various ways to enhance learning, such as auto-hypnosis, insta-skill nano, and even dream rehearsal. Yeah, now the dreaming skill has another practical use. It has advice for introducing learning into an ongoing campaign or in make learning or teaching the focus of your game. In my opinion, this is one of the best written GURPS books that deserves more attention than it currently gets. As a GM, remember that these mechanics give you countless opportunities for adventures and other exciting things. You should define what can be bought at character creation and what can only be learned during the actual game. If one of the characters finds an ancient textbook with a skill, spell, or advantage that nobody else has access to, that will feel rewarding. A teacher's instruction can be a reward, and finding a suitable teacher can be an adventure in of itself. Such rewards might be very unusual for those who are used to just being rewarded with gold, and can be a welcome change of pace. I also have to mention that these mechanics can and have been adapted to represent other things. For example, GURPS Thaumatology introduced devotional enchanting that was later used in sorcery. Basically, you teach the item its properties, and I think that this yet again shows just how flexible GURPS is. And that's it for this video. The rules for learning are not complicated, but might require some additional bookkeeping, but there are ways around that as well. If improvement through study is a thing in your game, some advantages and disadvantages become more important. For example, less sleep gives you extra hours to study. Elves are in luck. So go ahead, study, teach, live long and prosper.